Have you asked yourself these two questions? First of all, should you go and start a new channel or completely transition or add a new platform? Or do you go and discover new audience or do you create it? If you've wondered about your content strategy, about your strategy for acquiring new audience, well, you're in good luck because today we're going to talk about the Samir's Pyramid, a framework that will help you discover, create, or decide on whether you should go and expand to new type of platforms or start a completely new channel. Now, should you listen to me when it comes to this kind of questions? Well, yes, because I've been studying the commercial strategy and business operations for the creator economy for the past 4 years, but I've been doing it for the startups and publicly traded companies for the past 15 plus years. And I've done enough to gain some awareness and recognition from the creators that you see on the screen over here. And my sole goal for doing this kind of work is to ensure that the creators can become financially independent thanks to some of these frameworks and strategies, and that I can help increase or at least contribute mildly to the increase in the global marketing spend allocated towards the creators to 50%, up from the current 3. So we have a tall hill to climb when it comes to that goal, but my hope is through these kind of frameworks and through sharing my experience over the past 15 years with you creators, I can help you achieve your commercial goals. Now, without further ado, let's go talk about Samir's Pyramid. Samir's Pyramid was actually a framework created by Samir of Colin and Samir. The whole idea is pretty simple. It says that you essentially have levels to sophistication of your audience, from the lowest one, which is usually the biggest and the broadest set of viewers, all the way to the top ones who are the most influential, but they usually come very few in numbers. This applies to any creator, anyone who is currently working on content. You're either addressing them all to various degrees with various type of content, or you might be just addressing a single layer of them and you're missing out on a broader opportunity for you to either increase your influence by going up the pyramid or increasing your reach by going further down the pyramid. To illustrate it in a different way, check out this potential sample scenario. You can be today consuming and producing content primarily on YouTube, and you have shorts and you have your long form videos, and your shorts really addressing this least influential but the most broadest set of audience, and then your VODs, your long form content, addresses the peak, the most influential ones who seek a lot more information and longer form type of content. But maybe today you're not addressing that middle part completely, and so the whole idea would be with your decision to expand is that you want to broaden and tap into this market, but they do not necessarily falling into the long form or short form content on YouTube. So you have to go off of platform and go on the right hand side into, say, podcasting. And podcasting is a way you're going to reach that audience. So just a simple scenario, something for you to consider. But the whole idea is that anytime you start thinking about your audience, don't think about them as one homogeneous set of people. It's actually layers of sophistication and things that they're interested in. And this brings us to a very important question. Tahir, this is all fun and great, but how am I going to apply it to my specific scenario? The way you're going to apply it is that you're going to think about the value that you provide to your audience. And the way you're going to achieve the understanding of that value is that you're going to apply the jobs to be done framework. Jobs to be done framework is essentially the way you're going to discover your audience. I've spoken about it in some of my other types of videos as well as in my course on vidIQ, but the whole idea is that you're going to ask yourself, why viewer is hiring you to provide them that value through your content. And the type of content and the type of value you can provide is usually broken into 3 categories, in my opinion. It's either you are entertaining them, you're educating them, or you're providing them with additional information. So you're informing them. Your informing set is essentially any creator who shares news, gossip, provides information about different niches, things of that nature. Educational type of content is this kind of content where someone comes in, brings in their expertise and teaches you a new skill or a new type of sphere of knowledge that you will then go and apply in real life, hopefully. And then from the perspective of entertainment, self-explanatory, it's your maybe comedic channels, it's your skit channels, it can be your athletic and sport channels, trick shots, like Dude Perfect, all of them, I would bucket them into that entertainment section. And within each bucket, obviously, then you can layer in additional sets of influences. Like, for example, you can be entertaining in a comedy, entertainment in sports, entertainment in music, entertainment in movies, and so on and so forth. So you can start breaking them down, but all of them together come back to those 3 values: inform, entertain, educate. And if you want to push back and you want to say, no, here I'm special, they're doing something completely different, and the reason why they watch me is completely different, you're wrong. They are still boiling down to one of these 3 categories. And the sooner you realize and the sooner you understand and be honest with yourself in terms of what role you play, the easier it will be for you to go and expand that audience and build up on it up to the point where you can extract additional value and provide new monetization options for yourself and people who work for you. So for that, you really need to start thinking about, okay, if the job that the viewer usually hires me to do is education, am I providing them that value with each new piece of content? And the reason I think it's important for you to ask yourself this question is because the better you understand that value and the better you understand what they're seeking from you personally, the more you'll be able to leverage it as you think about that pyramid and as you start thinking about, okay, if I'm thinking about them as C layer, right? Today I'm addressing the least influential, but the broadest one because I provide them with education, but education is not necessarily super in depth. It's very shallow and it's something that people use as like one-on-one introduction to the subject that you educate them about. Does it mean that now you jump straight into the VODs to help, bring in more sophisticated audience that requires that level 201, 301, 401? Or do you need to expand and start providing them additional places where they can consume that content and they want maybe to consume it and your content covers more in-depth information, but because it takes more time, people don't have that time. So you need to provide the kind of places, maybe like a podcasting, where you go and you let them have a passive listen while they're driving, doing their chores, and they go and educate and they study the subject that you teach. So from that perspective, you need to start thinking about it, because the more you start thinking about whether your content satisfies the job that they're hiring you to do, the cleaner will be your set of ideas that you put in front of your audience. And this is where it's important for you to also criticize yourself and ask yourself, hey, am I doing everything that I need to do to acquire and educate that audience? And this is where that question comes in of who else can your viewer hire, so to speak, to provide this education? And let's be very specific. Let's pick the subject of cooking. Today, you might be providing them with some high-level cooking in the short-form content where you quickly browse through different parts of the recipe, and that's about it. And maybe you have like a text version of recipe somewhere in the caption. That's about all that you do. Who else can provide them similar kind of value? Cookbooks, cooking channels, long-form cooking content. They can go to in-person class and study cooking in that kind of environment. And all of those provide exactly the same value as you do. So your competition is not only the viewer, the people who viewer can go and switch to when they're browsing YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Your competition are all around you. And you have to start thinking about it, because now you start realizing, wait a second, in my case, as a cooking channel, maybe my short form content addresses that section C, but for anyone who wants to be more sophisticated when it comes to cooking, I do not serve that purpose today because I don't do long form content, or maybe they predominantly are interested in doing it in person, or maybe they need some sort of like more advanced set of lessons. And now you start getting into the whole conversation of, wait a minute, for me to expand, I need to go and start thinking about different platforms and different ways by which I'm going to provide this value. That can be one version of that answer. The other version of that answer can be, no, you actually have them all in the place. You have them where you want them, right? They're all on YouTube. They're all consuming the content. They're switching between the long form and short form. But you might realize that just by thinking about, hey, what kind of format of video that they crave, you focus on very like clicky and very quick through the recipe and off to the next video, where your audience is actually demanding something a lot more. Let's sit down, talk me through the ingredients, the chemistry, talk me through the science of cooking, teach me how to get to from A to B, but take your time. And that will enable you to say, wait a second, maybe what I need is not new channel or new platform. Maybe what I really need is an additional format of the videos that I provide so that I can address that audience. And it all comes back to the fact that you've been critical enough with yourself and you ask yourself, what kind of job am I providing and satisfying? Who else can come in and provide the same kind of value? And can I replicate it in the formats that are available to me today on the platforms that I am on today? Or do I need to go and browse new platforms and new formats to help achieve that value? And if you're not sure how to go about actually going and discovering the answers to some of these questions, start reading your comments. Your comment section can be trove of information. Go through the popular channels in your niche and see what comment section for them look like. What kind of things people ask about, what they talk about, what they ask for. Maybe they ask for some specific formats from the bigger creator that you can replicate at your level, and that way kind of like jump a little bit ahead of them. Go on Reddit, go on other social media platforms, consume similar type of content that you think your audience might be interested in, and see if you can replicate those. Read about what kind of critical reception does the content that the other creators provide receive. Maybe people hated that long format video that they created, so you want to go and boil it down a little bit to the shorter form. Or maybe they said, no, this was way too short, way too much information in a lot of words in a very short video. Please give me more, but take your time explaining all of these bits and pieces of information. You got to study and you got to understand that audience. And that's where it comes back to the fact that in the debate of do you discover or do you create the audience, I lean towards discovery. I think that we have about 1 billion or so internet users globally. About maybe less than a quarter of them have high-speed internet. So they're likely those are the consumers who go and watch your videos and consume your content. Those are the folks who you are addressing. And if you prorate and do the 25%, it's still a quarter million of people globally who can potentially consume your content. Of course, depending on your niche, your mileage may vary, but the ultimate purpose of this calculation is to tell you creating new audiences might be a little bit too premature, especially if you're early on in your career, because you're still trying to figure out what kind of value you provide and what kind of like granular answer to some of these questions you can give. And because of this, you really want to start thinking more about like, let me go see what the bigger content creators out there do. How do they address their audience and how their audience respond? And see if you can replicate and kind of like carve out for yourself a niche, carve out for yourself one of these 3 sections where you're going to have someone a little bit more influential, but maybe with less reach if you're somewhere at the bottom right now of this pyramid, or maybe you just happen to be addressing already very sophisticated audience, but it is very small. So for you to go and kind of like expand, you need to start adding these additional layers. And maybe what you'll discover is that for those channels that are addressing those audiences, either the type of format or the type of content that they provide or the platforms that they're on are very different from where you are today. So be very critical with yourself, really understand the value, understand how you're addressing that value, who else can address that value for your viewer, and then start studying those other sources and see how do they provide that kind of value? How do they provide enough of information that your viewer craves and that they're getting satisfied over there? And how can you now replicate it on your platform or your specific channel and provide them that value right there so that then you can capture them and keep them kind of like within this triangle, within your pyramid? From that perspective, continuously go through these questions. Your audience will evolve, your content will evolve. If you're someone who is already relatively sophisticated as a creator, but you've kind of like capping out, maybe you've started on Instagram, you think you're just hit your ceiling, you plateaued your growth, and you're trying to think about where you go next, still ask yourself these questions, because these questions are very much applicable no matter how big of a creator you are, because quite frequently creators just fall into some of these audiences and they just, they're talented, they get a little bit lucky, and they start growing faster and faster and faster, but eventually they tap out of the growth. And for you to switch to the next set of audience, for you to switch to that next layer, you have to ask yourself similar kind of questions. Why did that bigger audience started to follow you to begin with? What kind of value did you provide? And who else is providing them with that value? And now can you replicate the value that they're gathering on other channels, in other formats, in person, in live events, right? In podcasting, short form, whatever that may be. And how can you embed it within your content, or how can you replicate that content on some of those platforms to become a more recognizable face that they can go and visit in the short form, visit in the podcast, visit in person, and also see you in long form content. And when you do all of this in one of the future sessions, we'll talk a little bit more about the product specifically, because then the interesting part becomes is the monetization, because you can start thinking about, okay, how can I monetize these different paths? Because each path, whether it's a short form, will have its own type of monetization, long form will have its own monetization opportunities, in-person events or podcasting will have its own version. So you're going to start to see a lot of paths for you to diversify your monetization, to become a lot more financially independent, which is the ultimate goal of the kind of work I do. If you're curious to learn more about the Jobs to be Done framework, check out these 2 books. I'm a big fan of both of them. The one on the left about Jobs to be Done, it's basically the whole, which we call the foundational piece about this hypothesis. And the Secret Life of the Secret Lives of Customers is your kind of like more novelized version of how a made-up consultant in a made-up coffee company goes about helping them find and discover the jobs to be done for their customers. But the second half of the book becomes very theoretical and kind of like a lot similar to the left one. But I highly recommend for you to study both, because in both cases, it's very interesting to hear the perspective and how the single cup of coffee can provide different kinds of value. It can be the value of getting, the kick of energy. It can be the reason why you socialize and how you get out there. It can be the way, an excuse for you to invite someone to socialize with you, maybe for a date. It can be a way for you to buy coffee and, secure a table. There's so many jobs that a single cup of coffee can do. And same goes for your content. Your content can play various different roles. It can inform, it can educate, it can entertain. Within those layers, it can do it in the short form, long format, podcasting, written, images. There's so many opportunities. There's so many exciting ways by which you can go and expand. And again, keep going and jumping up and down this pyramid and discovering new audiences, tapping into them, providing them with that value that they're missing, or maybe getting somewhere else, and really securing yourself as this go-to brand in your specific niche. So I hope this was useful. I hope this is something that now got your, wheel spinning when it comes to how can you approach your content strategy, how can you approach your strategy to expand and broaden your audience. If you still would like to chat more, reach out. Here, the link to some of my socials, obviously on my website, on my YouTube right now, so you can go and check it out. But also check out my other socials. Hit me up if you want to chat more. I talk to creators constantly every week about different commercial strategy or business operations topics. So I'm very happy to go and chat with you about it. And this is completely new format. I know it's like, hey, he's recording on Zoom. What the heck is he doing? Tried to record on OBS. OBS completely crashed on this specific laptop, so I have to kind of like rethink the whole setup because I have a lot more going on here. But I figured, okay, we're gonna keep it nice and simple for today because I need to keep my weekly upload schedule going. But come next videos, I'll try out a few things. We'll make a little bit more of a sophisticated setup, as well as when it comes to the content itself. Actually, the future few weeks will be very much focused on me replicating the content that I've taught on vidIQ and Creator now, that people kept asking me if I have recordings of it. So now I'm actually going to go and record them. So there's going to be a lot more in-depth conversations about the commercial strategy, monetization strategy, how to think about finance, accounting, budgeting, how to think about how do you create a physical product versus digital product, services versus in-person events. So if you ever thought about how can you achieve financial independence and how can you ensure you have a business operations backbone that supports your entire infrastructure, welcome to my channel. There's going to be a lot more conversations on that, a lot more different formats and experiments on how I'm going to deliver this information. I already have some of that information in my past videos, so go check them out. But otherwise, just subscribe, stay in touch, and you will see a lot more of this course-like content for the next few weeks as we wrap up 2024. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next Saturday. Peace.